At this moment, in a bar filled with loud and lively music, everyone inside is raising their glasses in celebration. Th letter 1 ECBNH and Enhiern sits alone at a table, lifting her glass to drink. Her shimmering eyes are filled with sorrow as if she wants to drink away all the pain consuming her. And Enhiern slams the glass down on the table and shouts, "Another drink? I want the strongest liquor you have. My boyfriend cheated on me with my best friend. Isn't this something that only happens in novels? Why am I so unlucky? Ki letter 1 EC1 UTR letter 1 E1CH, Lair NGUY letter 1 EC7T, how could you both do this to me?" The next second, the bartender pours a drink and places it in front of her, saying, "It's good that you've seen his true colors. This one's on me." A wake-up call, and Enhiern responds, "Thank you." In her emotional state, she lifts the glass and downs it in one gulp. A few seconds later, the alcohol kicks in, and Enhiern looks at the glass and mutters, "Why am I already feeling dizzy after just a little drink?" Her vision starts to blur. Then she collapses onto the table. As she raises the glass again, the bartender gently takes it from her hand. In an instant, she is taken to a room. Her face was flushed red and her outer coat had been removed, leaving only a tight-fitting nightdress that accentuated her figure. Suddenly, she opened her eyes as a man's voice rang out, "You're awake." And Enhiern's vision was hazy and her body felt unbearably warm. Unable to control herself, she instinctively reached out and pulled the man closer. Her breath was ragged as she whispered, "So hot, help me." The man hesitated for a moment before gently brushing his lips against her forehead. As the effect of the unknown substance intensified, the two became lost in the moment, oblivious to everything else around them. Their bodies intertwined, and what happened next, well, you can imagine the rest. That man was none other than Nam Than, the CEO of the Th letter 1 ECBNHD stroke letter 1B0 letter 1 EDDNG hotel and restaurant chain. His gaze, clouded with emotion, locked onto hers as he whispered, "It's okay now." Suddenly, she reached up and pulled off the necklace with a blue gemstone from around his neck. Caught off guard, he lost his balance and collapsed onto her. Time passed, but the memory lingered. 2 months had gone by, yet the events of that night still haunted her. She snapped back to reality, realizing she was at work, lost in thought. A colleague sitting across from her noticed and spoke up, "You're awake? I saw you sweating a lot, so I got you some food. You should eat a little to keep up your strength." And Enhier nodded and replied, "Thank you." She opened the lunchbox, but as soon as the aroma of food reached her nose, she immediately pinched her nose, feeling a wave of nausea wash over her. Seconds later, she rushed to the restroom as fast as she could. She turned on the faucet and rinsed her mouth. Her colleague ran in after her. After she finished vomiting, the girl patted her back and looked into the mirror, asking, "Are you okay? Why did you suddenly feel nauseous? Could it be you're pregnant?" The girl suddenly realized she might have spoken too much and quickly laughed it off. "Just kidding, besides you're single, right? But still, you should take care of your health." Her colleague's words struck her like a wake-up call. No, it couldn't be. There was only that one night. It wouldn't be that much of a coincidence, right? Feeling uneasy, she decided to visit the hospital alone the next day. She walked into the obstetrics department of an international general hospital. Holding the ultrasound results in her hands, she felt a wave of shock wash over her. The doctor's voice echoed in her ears like a thunderclap. "Miss Th letter 1 ECBNH, congratulations, you're really pregnant. The baby is now about 10 weeks old and its development looks stable." Seeing her lack of reaction, the female doctor called out again, "Miss Th letter 1 ECBNH." She snapped out of her daze, lifted her head, and murmured in despair, "I'm pregnant, I'm really pregnant." Then the memories of the moment she was drugged suddenly resurfaced, shocking images flooding her mind. Fear and anxiety took over as she thought, "But I don't even know who the father of this baby is. What should I do now?" The female doctor kept calling her name, but Enhiern was lost in her own turmoil. What should I do, having a child on my own? How will I give birth? How will I raise and take care of them? Overwhelmed by countless worries, she suddenly collapsed to the floor. The doctor panicked and called out, "Is anyone there? The patient has fainted." Just then, someone pushed open the door from the hallway. A group of men dressed in formal black suits entered the room, their expressions stern. One of them carried a small briefcase. The female doctor, startled, asked nervously, "Who are you?" Without a word, one of the men handed the doctor the briefcase and said, "This money is for you. What happened today must never be spoken of. If you do, you'll bear the consequences yourself. Do you understand?" As he spoke, he reached out and supported an Enhiern. 5 years later, at Terminal 1 of Nam City Airport, an airplane slowly landed from the sky. Letter 1 E9C Nam Than stepped off the plane. As he walked a few steps, his assistant Chow beside him said, "Director Letter 1E9C, the young master hasn't eaten or drunk anything for more than a day. Do you want to go home first?" Letter 1E9C Nam Than coldly replied, "Why are you only telling me this now?" Chow Fuang responded, "You had an important contract signing in Chicago. I was afraid you would miss it, so I didn't contact you. Besides, I didn't expect the young master to skip meals like that." Letter 1E9C Nam Than slightly lowered his glasses and glanced at Assistant Chow with a serious look. "Since when did you start making decisions on my behalf?" His eyes showed a hint of anger. He put his hands in his pockets and walked quickly. Suddenly, he stopped when a piece of chocolate rolled to his feet. He bent down slightly, picked it up, examined it for a moment, and asked, "What is this?" A small, delicate hand gently tugged at his sleeve. In front of him stood an adorable little girl named TH1ECBNH TI1EC3U10, the daughter of TH1ECBNH and Nhiern. The little girl looked up at him with sparkling round eyes and reached out her hand, saying, "Uncle, if you want chocolate, you should buy it yourself. I don't have extra chocolate to share with you." He turned to look at the girl and asked, "Do you like this brand of chocolate?" The girl replied, "Yes, uncle, do you like it too?" A sudden thought crossed his mind. Whose child was this? He had never seen her before, yet why did she seem so familiar? His actions made Assistant Chow beside him a little puzzled. Didn't director Letter 1E9C dislike other people's children? Yet he was being so gentle with this little girl. Nam Than said, "I don't like eating sweets, but my older brother loves them. I buy a lot for him, I can give you a box." As he spoke, he reached his hand toward Assistant Chow to take the box of sweets. TI letter 1EC3U10 hesitated, holding out both hands nervously. "But my mom told me not to accept things from strangers." Assistant Chow Fuang anxiously urged, "Director letter 1E9C, it's time for us to go." The little girl leaned in and gave him a light kiss on the cheek, her sweet voice saying that should be enough. Nam Than stood up, waved goodbye to the little girl, and got into the car. TI letter 1EC3U10 smiled brightly and called out, "Goodbye, uncle." Holding the box of sweets in her hands, her sparkling eyes pondered, "Uncle is handsome but also a little strange. If only he were my dad, that would be great." Lost in thought, she was suddenly startled by a loud voice calling her name, TI letter 1EC3U10. This person was none other than TH letter 1ECBNH and Nhiern, the precious daughter of the TH letter 1ECBNH family. She angrily shouted, "Didn't I tell you to stay put and wait for me? Why are you running around like this?" Immediately, TI letter 1EC3U10 was grabbed by the collar and lifted up by her mother. The little girl stammered as she explained, "The chocolate fell, so I went to pick it up." And Nhiern noticed a box of chocolate in the girl's hand. She picked it up and asked, "Where did you get this?" TI letter 1EC3U10 replied, "A handsome uncle saw that I was cute, so he gave it to me." And Nhiern, furious, pointed at her daughter and said, "He gave it to you? Why didn't you just go with him then?" TI letter 1EC3U10 stammered, "Mom, I was wrong. When we get home, I'll voluntarily stand facing the wall for 3 minutes, okay?" She chuckled at TI letter 1EC3U10. This child was even trying to act with her. Then she changed her tone, 10 minutes. TI letter 1EC3U10 pleaded, "Mom, 10 minutes is too long. Can you reduce it a little?" And Nhiern sternly said, "No more talking. If you try to bargain, I'll increase the time." TI letter 1EC3U10 immediately raised her hand to her mouth, making a locking gesture. And Nhiern held the little girl's hand as they skipped along and said, "Let's go, Tin Tin, time to go home." The next morning, Nhiern was on her way to TH letter 1ECBNH, Distroke, letter 1B0, letter 1EDD, NG Corporation for an interview. As she walked, she thought to herself, "Oh no, I might be running late. Hopefully Tin Tin behaves well at home alone." Just as she stepped inside the lobby and saw the elevator doors about to close, she hurriedly ran forward. "Wait, hold the elevator." She rushed into the elevator and accidentally bumped into letter 1E9C Nam Than. Flustered, she stammered, I'm sorry. I'm in a hurry for an interview." Then she quickly stepped back 2 paces. Suddenly, she realized her hair had gotten tangled in the button of his suit. She reached up to untangle it and softly said, "I'm really sorry. Could you help me with this?" The atmosphere in the elevator froze. Everyone inside looked on in fear, thinking, she's done for. Who is this woman? How could she barge into the executive elevator like that? And isn't director letter 1E9C a germaphobe? At that moment, Nam Than cast a serious gaze at her. He gently removed each strand of hair that had tangled around his coat button, and Nhiern trembled in fear, her hands and feet shaking. Nam Than continued, "Stay still, relax your body." As soon as he spoke, Nhiern suddenly froze. Why did this warm voice sound so familiar? Once again, the image of that fateful night in her life resurfaced. A dazed, blurry face, the same deep, soothing voice saying, "It'll be over soon, it's okay now." She hurriedly patted her face. Why was she suddenly remembering that? What on earth was she? What was she even doing? And Nhiern tried to regain her composure and replied, "Yes, thank you," but in her mind she couldn't stop thinking this man. She stared intently at him, the mysterious man standing before her. She found herself at a loss for words, and for a moment the two of them just locked eyes. Seeing this, Assistant Chow Fuang stepped forward, blocking her view of Nam Than, and said, "Hey miss, earlier you said you were in a hurry for an interview, but weren't you actually just trying to start a conversation?" Nam Than's gaze suddenly changed. Both of them had the same thought, start a conversation. Nam Than pondered, start a conversation. He recalled the moment when the girl hurriedly rushed into the elevator, stammering that she was in a hurry for an interview. Then came her desperate plea, her eyes looking as if she was seeking help. "Sorry, I'm really sorry. Can you help me with something?" Nam Than stared at her without blinking. And Nhiern felt a bit annoyed and asked, "What's with that look of yours?" In her mind, she thought, so much for me thanking him earlier for his kindness. Feeling uneasy, Chow Fuang spoke up loudly, "Miss, please step out. The staff elevator is over there." And Nhiern quickly responded, "Wait a minute, I really..." Before she could finish, she was immediately pushed out of the elevator. As the doors closed, she muttered outside, "Who does he think he is? So ridiculous, even trying to strike up a conversation." She scoffed, "Just by looking at him, he seems like the boss of the hotel." Coincidentally, her words were still perfectly audible to Nam Than without a single word missing. The assistant glanced over at him. Nam Than's eyes were cold. The assistant thought to himself, is this applicant tired of living? She actually dared to call Director Letter 1E9C the boss of the hotel? Meanwhile, Nam Than was lost in thought, piecing together the situation, her deliberate approach, her malicious insult. Very well. Then he ordered his assistant, "Tell the manager that I will attend the interview at 10 o'clock. At the same time, in the interview waiting room, 3 girls were gathered chatting. She quietly opened the door and stepped inside. Looking around, she thought to herself, why are there so many people here for the interview? Nearby, 2 girls were whispering. The girl in the gray outfit spoke up, "I just received some insider information. Director Letter 1E9C will be attending the interview later." The girl in the red dress exclaimed, "Really? I heard that Director Letter 1E9C is not only handsome and tall but also has a son but no wife. If he's the interviewer, doesn't that mean we have a better chance?" Maybe, another girl responded, "But I also heard that there's something wrong with that side of him." Upon hearing this, an image of Letter 1E9C Nam Than suddenly appeared in her mind. Usually company bosses with kids are already over 40, right? Probably balding with a beer belly, getting old. As for that part, it's probably done before the fun even begins. Or maybe it just doesn't work properly anymore, ahaha. Suddenly her name was called from the interview room. And Enhyeon quickly responded, "Coming." Then she stood up and walked straight in. She pushed the door open, feeling a bit nervous. As soon as she stepped inside, the first thing that caught her eye was the 4 interviewers staring at her. But perhaps the most striking sight was Letter 1E9C Nam Than sitting at the interview table. She thought to herself, isn't this the man from the elevator earlier? Nam Than's deep, contemplative gaze locked onto her. The resume stated that she studied at D Letter 1B0 Letter 1E3CT Letter 1EA5N Business Academy, so he asked, "You haven't graduated?" And Enhyeon lowered her head slightly and stammered, I haven't obtained my university diploma yet." The manager sitting beside him spoke up, "Not graduated? Do you think getting into TH Letter 1ECBNH D stroke Letter 1B0 Letter 1EDD and G group is that easy? Why is HR letting just anyone in here?" Nam Than raised his hand, signaling the manager to be silent, and continued, "Did you read the job requirements? Based solely on your work experience in Germany, you won't make it into TH Letter 1ECBNH TH Letter 1EBF. Leave." Then he tossed the resume toward her. And Enhyeon sorrowfully bent down to pick up the documents. Nam Than's voice was laced with sarcasm as he continued, "Relying on petty tricks, someone who hasn't even completed their education won't be accepted by any company." After gathering all the papers, she boldly placed them back on the table. Looking him straight in the eye, she said, "If you think only a diploma proves capability, then let's make a bet." Hearing this, Kao CH Letter 1EA1M, sitting beside them, became intrigued and asked, "Young lady, what kind of bet do you want to make with him?" And Enhyeon confidently said, "I will work at TH Letter 1ECBNH D stroke Letter 1B0 Letter 1EDD and GS restaurant for 3 months and guarantee that the monthly profit will increase by more than 30%. If I succeed, I want TH Letter 1ECBNH D stroke Letter 1B0 Letter 1EDD and G to hire me as an official employee with triple the salary. Also, you must." She paused, staring straight at Nam Than. Hearing this, Kao CH Letter 1E1M smugly looked at Nam Than and urged, Agree. "A Than, if you don't agree, you're nothing but a coward, you know?" Nam Than shot Kao CH Letter 1EA1M a deadly glare, making him break into a cold sweat. Nam Than confidently stood up and asked, "And if you fail?" And Enhyeon replied without hesitation, "Then I will sell myself to TH Letter 1ECBNH D stroke Letter 1B0 Letter 1EDD and G for 3 years. Nam Than, you can do whatever you want with me. So do you dare to accept this bet?" Seeing her confidence, Nam Than hesitated for a moment. He quietly walked past her. Stopping briefly, he turned his head slightly and said, "Wait for the job announcement. I accept the bet." Kao CH Letter 1EA1M excitedly ran after him. "An Than, wait for me, let's eat together." Before leaving, he didn't forget to turn back and say to her, "Little sister, good luck." And Enhyeon felt a bit happy she had finally secured the job, but the pressure would be immense. As night fell at an Enhyeon's apartment, as soon as she opened the door and stepped in, TI Letter 1EC3 Yutin ran up and hugged her tightly, proudly announcing, "I finished learning all my vocabulary words. I even heated up the food in the microwave." And Enhyeon smiled and kissed her daughter's cheek. "My sweet girl, you're such a good child." With that, TI Letter 1EC3 Yutin pulled her mother's hand. "Mom, come here quickly." And Enhyeon's round eyes filled with thoughts. Just a moment ago, TI Letter 1EC3 Yutin was still so small. 5 years ago, she was just a tiny little girl. Seeing an Enhyeon lost in thought, TI Letter 1EC3 Yutin called out, "Mom, what are you thinking about? Let's eat." And Enhyeon reached out and gently patted the little girl's head. "All right." TI Letter 1EC3 Yutin continued, "Mom." And Enhyeon looked at her and asked, "What is it, dear?" TI Letter 1EC3 Yutin innocently said, "Why don't you and Dad get a divorce?" Hearing that, an Enhyeon froze. Why are you suddenly saying this? Ti letter 1EC3 Yutin answered, because I feel like dad doesn't like you. I barely see him once a year and he doesn't care about us. He's not close to you at all. I don't need a dad like that anymore. Mom, can we get a new dad? And Enhyeon felt a pang of sadness. She had only wanted to keep Ti letter 1EC3 Yutin from overthinking, hiring people every year to pretend to be her father, yet Ti letter 1EC3 Yutin remembered everything. Seeing her mother's expression, Ti letter 1EC3 Yutin asked, Mom, what are you thinking about? Don't worry about me, just find a new dad, someone who loves us. I can accept him as long as he's different. And Enhyeon hugged her tightly. Silly girl, I just want to take good care of you and watch you grow up. Ti letter 1EC3 Yutin looked up and said, but Mom, I want an older brother too, and a dad who will spoil me like a princess. And Enhyeon looked at the little girl and thought to herself, my daughter, you actually have an older brother, but I lost him. Ti letter 1EC3 Yutin, on the other hand, was thinking, what a pity I don't know that uncle at the airport. Just one glance and I could tell he would be a perfect match for Mom. All right, I need to find a new dad, someone handsome and gentle who can make Mom happy every day. The next day at TH letter 1ECBNHD stroke letter 1B0 letter 1EDDNG hotel, it was her first day at work. The hotel was bustling with guests coming and going, some checking in, others hurrying to complete their reservations. An Enhyeon stood near the counter, gently assisting an elderly woman. She smiled warmly and said, it's my honor to be able to help you, ma'am. She thought to herself, I didn't expect my first day of work to coincide with the company's 10th anniversary. Why is so much happening at once? Just as she wiped a few drops of sweat from her forehead, a man's voice called out her name, and Enhyeon. She turned in the direction of the voice. And Enhyeon recognized them immediately. They were her old friends. One of them was Ki letter 1EC1 UTR letter 1E1CH, her ex-boyfriend. The woman standing beside him was Lair NGUY letter 1EC7T, her former best friend who was now his partner. Lair NGUY letter 1EC7T spoke up, and Enhyeon, is that really you? It's been so long. Saying that, Lair NGUY letter 1EC7T ran over and grabbed an Enhyeon's hand. And Enhyeon, I heard that you went abroad and cut off contact with your family. Now that you're back, have you met your uncle? Beside her, Ki letter 1EC1 UTR letter 1E1CH pulled Lair NGUY letter 1EC7T's hand and said, Tia letter 1EC3 UNGUY letter 1EC7T, let's go. Lair NGUY letter 1EC7T replied, go where? I haven't finished talking to an Enhyeon yet. She grabbed an Enhyeon's hand and spoke loudly, come on, an Enhyeon, it's been years since we last talked. An Enhyeon reluctantly responded, I'm still working. In her mind, she thought, there are too many people in the lobby, I can't cause a scene here. The two of them entered the elevator. Even though people around them were staring curiously, Lair NGUY letter 1EC7T kept rambling on, it's been years since we last talked. Lair NGUY letter 1EC7T raised her hand, showing off the wedding ring, and said, an Enhyeon, can you come to my wedding with Ki letter 1EC1 UTR letter 1E1CH? It's on the 18th of next month. I hope you can make it. And Enhyeon froze, her eyes filled with surprise as she thought, isn't that the same ring Ki letter 1EC1 UTR letter 1E1CH and I picked out together 5 years ago? Lair NGUY letter 1EC7T continued, are you afraid you won't have anyone to go with? Don't worry, I know plenty of people and can introduce someone to you. Feeling irritated, and Enhyeon turned away and said, I have work to do, I'm not free. Besides, I already have a boyfriend. Attending the engagement party of my ex and my former best friend, I doubt he would let me go. Lair NGUY letter 1EC7T smiled while holding an Enhyeon's hand and said with a laugh, an Enhyeon, you have a boyfriend? Why don't you call him out so we can meet him? I really want to know your boyfriend. Come on, call him, maybe he has time. And Enhyeon replied, no need, he's very busy. Lair NGUY letter 1EC7T insisted, grabbing an Enhyeon's hand, but an Enhyeon angrily pulled away and shouted, let go of me. As she spoke, she forcefully swung Lair NGUY letter 1EC7T's hand away, but due to her high heels, she accidentally lost her balance. She fell straight into Nam Than's arms, completely stunned. She was so shocked she couldn't even cry. What a small world. Why does it have to be him again? Meanwhile, Lair NGUY letter 1EC7T, on the verge of tears, exclaimed, an Enhyeon, are you okay? Sir, my friend didn't do it on purpose. A sudden thought flashed through an Enhyeon's mind as she looked at Nam Than. Without hesitation, she turned to him and acted, honey, why didn't you say anything while you were in the elevator? Were you trying to surprise me? Lair NGUY letter 1EC7T fumed internally, this man is an Enhyeon's boyfriend. How could she possibly land a guy like him? No, that's impossible. Just then, Ki letter 1EC1 UTR letter 1E1CH appeared, standing still without saying a word. An Enhyeon glanced at Nam Than, signaling him. Lair NGUY letter 1EC7T scoffed, and Enhyeon, if you want to prove you have a boyfriend, you shouldn't just pull a random guy into your act. That would make things difficult for him. Suddenly, Nam Than wrapped his arm around an Enhyeon's waist, looked at Lair NGUY letter 1EC7T with a cold gaze, and asked, how much do you think she would need to pay me to act for her? An Enhyeon was stunned, was he actually helping her? Then Chao Fuang also spoke up. Director letter 1E9C, this is the speech from the Con stroke I letter 1EC3N event. I've reviewed it briefly and there are no issues. Chao Fuang thought to himself, think what the director thinks, do what the director does. Hearing this, Laren GUY letter 1EC7T suddenly froze in place, her mouth stuttering. Director letter 1E9C. A thought flashed through her mind, could it be letter 1E9C Nam Than? Wasn't he supposed to avoid women? And yet he and TH letter 1ECBNH and N Hieran ended up together. At that moment, the elevator doors slowly opened, and Laren GUY letter 1EC7T and KI letter 1EC1UTR letter 1A1CH stepped out. Laren GUY letter 1EC7T waved goodbye and N Hieran will head off first. Hopefully, you and director letter 1E9C will come to our engagement ceremony. As soon as the elevator doors closed, letter 1E9C Nam Than immediately pinned her against the wall. Weren't you the one provoking me at first? Are you scared now? And Enhieran stammered in fear, why you, if you have something to say, just say it, don't get so close. Nam Than replied that day it was even more than this. He let her go and Laren GUY let her 1EC7T calmly said, I already told you that day was just an accident. Nam Than questioned her, and today, using me as a shield, was that an accident too? He continued, I helped you because you're my employee. But if you pull another stunt, the bet will end before the agreed time. With that, he left the elevator. And Enhieran was filled with frustration. This is infuriating, why do I keep getting caught up in these ridiculous situations? She thought, but deep down, even she couldn't deny that she was developing feelings for him. Suddenly, a panicked female employee rushed over, manager TH letter 1ECBNH, I've been looking for you everywhere. The VIP guest refuses to eat and his family members aren't around. If he falls or stays hungry for too long. And Enhieran regained her composure and continued walking. She thought to herself, what kind of irresponsible adult leaves a child alone in a room? As she walked, she said, come on, let's go check it out. And Enhieran arrived at the VIP room door. She pushed the door open. A group of staff members was pacing back and forth in front of the room. As soon as they saw her, one of the employees excitedly said, manager TH letter 1ECBNH, you're here. And Enhieran asked, where is the child? The staff member replied, inside, manager TH letter 1ECBNH. What should we do now? And Enhieran stepped inside with a worried expression, oh my god. She scanned the room. On the floor, a broken lamp lay shattered, thrown by the boy. As she walked closer, she noticed spilled noodles scattered across the ground. And Enhieran turned to the staff and said, contact the child's family. I'll go inside and check on him. She reached for the door handle. A male employee hesitated, you're really going in there? The female staff member responded, then you go in instead. The male staff quickly shook his head, no way, that little old man is furious. If I make him angrier, I'm done for. And Enhieran pushed open the door and stepped inside. The room was pitch dark. She spoke softly, hello, sweetheart. As soon as she finished speaking, a pillow flew out of the darkness at high speed, and Enhieran swiftly raised her hand and caught it. Standing before her was a young boy around the same age as her daughter, TI letter 1EC3U Tin. He hesitantly stepped forward, and Enhieran slowly moved toward him, noticing his frightened expression. She knelt down gently and asked, sweetheart, don't be afraid. Can you tell me why you're upset? The boy, as if understanding her words, widened his big round eyes and looked at her. And Enhieran looked at the boy, waiting for a reaction from him. The boy took out a piece of paper and a pen. Seeing this, and Enhieran thought to herself, why isn't this child saying anything? He's so young, yet he already knows how to write. The boy held up the paper towards her with the words, Dad said he was going out to play, but he never came back here. And Enhieran felt sympathy for the boy, gently patting his head and saying, that's terrible, really terrible. How could your dad do that? When he comes back, I'll help you. And Enhieran stood up and looked at the boy. You must be hungry, right? I'll go get you some food. Just as she was about to leave, the boy suddenly reached out and tugged at her sleeve. The lights in the room suddenly went out and an eerie noise came from above. The boy was terrified. And Enhieran's eyes darted to the ceiling where the chandelier began shaking violently. It suddenly fell and a loud scream echoed through the room. Manager TH letter 1ECBNH, the young master. Without hesitation, and Enhieran bent down to shield the boy. The chandelier crashed onto her, leaving a deep wound on her shoulder. She collapsed onto the floor as the boy looked at her in shock. Her vision blurred as she gazed at him and he cried out, Mom. The scene shifted. At a private club, people were enjoying themselves to the fullest. Inside the VIP section, Nam Than sat alone, sipping coffee. A woman in a red dress peeked through the curtains and called out, Nam Than, is that really you? She stepped in and sat down at his table. I was just about to look for you. A few days ago, I met with Grandpa. He said that since you're raising C letter 1EA3NH high alone, there will come a time when you won't be able to take care of him properly. It seems like he wants to bring C letter 1EA3NH high home to live with him. He looked at her and said, I'm afraid going home isn't any safer than staying by my side. You don't need to come here to convince me. The woman sneered coldly, convince you? I was just saying. Suddenly from outside, Assistant Chow rushed in, pulling back the curtain in a panic. Director letter 1E9C, the hotel just called. The glass chandelier in the young master's room suddenly fell. Nam Than's face turned pale. Where's C letter 1EA3NH high? Is he okay? The assistant replied, luckily the hotel staff arrived in time to save him and he has been taken to the hospital. The woman suddenly froze. The hospital, Nam Than immediately stood up and rushed out. The woman hurriedly followed. Nam Than, wait for me, I'll go with you. Upon arriving at the hospital, Nam Than headed straight to C1E3NH High's hospital room. He pushed the door open, his voice trembling as he called out C1E3NH High, but what he saw on the hospital bed was not C1E3NH High, it was an Enhiern. The boy was sitting beside the bed. Seeing Nam Than enter, the boy turned to look at him. Then he suddenly ran over and hugged Nam Than tightly. Nam Than gently asked, C1E3NH High, what's wrong? C1E3NH High pulled Nam Than toward the hospital bed. Looking at the woman lying there in Enhier, Nam Than frowned. She risked her life to save C1E3NH High. Staring at an Enhiern unconscious on the hospital bed, something stirred inside Nam Than. Just then, the red-haired woman entered the room with Assistant Chow. She called out C1E3NH High. Nam Than bent down slightly, gently patting C1E3NH High's head. I'm really sorry for what happened today. I promise I won't break my word again, okay? The woman stepped forward, softly brushing the boy's hair. Let me handle this. He must have been really scared today. C1E3NH High, do you want to go eat with me? C1E3NH High remained silent. The woman continued, he's really shaken up. Nam Than, let me take C1E3NH High home with you. He needs rest. Nam Than sighed. All right, let's go. Once again, Nam Than looked at an Enhiern lying on the hospital bed. He felt a slight sense of guilt in his heart and then told Chow Fuang, tell the hospital to take good care of her. The two left the hospital and got into the car. In the car, C1E3NH High lay asleep on Nam Than's lap. A woman standing outside the vehicle asked, is C1E3NH High asleep? He replied, yes, it's late. You should go home too. The woman responded, it's fine, my driver is waiting over there. I know you have no intention of getting married, but C1E3NH High needs someone to take care of her. What Grandpa said makes sense. Nam Than thought to himself, marriage? The woman continued, if anything happens, just call me. C1E3NH High and I are close. Moments later, he signaled the driver to drive away, leaving the woman standing alone on the roadside. Soon after her car arrived, she got in and shut the door. Frustrated, she told the driver, drive. The driver glanced at her through the rearview mirror and said, Ms. Ho1EAFC, this whole thing wouldn't have been a problem if that hotel manager hadn't appeared out of nowhere. She coldly replied, it doesn't matter. Then she added, if she really dies, that wouldn't be ideal. Let Nam Than feel fear, only then will he start considering marriage. The driver asked, and what about the child? She replied, leave them alone for now. There will be more chances in the future. For the next few days, I'll have to visit the hotel more often. Tell the assistant to prepare a lot of things that children like, I'll bring them over. Scene shifts to the hospital room. At this moment, an Enhiern had woken up. Ti1EC3 Utin spoke first, Mom, you're awake? An Enhiern looked at the little girl and asked, Tin Tin, why are you here? How long have I been asleep? Ti1EC3 Utin replied, you didn't come home for so long, I was really worried about you. Then the uncles and aunts from your hotel brought me here. Don't move, Mom, the doctor said you can only be discharged the day after tomorrow. An Enhiern gently looked at Ti1EC3 Utin and said, Tin Tin, I'm sorry for making you worry about me. Ti1EC3 Utin replied, so you know I was worried? It was so dangerous and yet you ran forward like that. What if you hit your head? Suddenly there was a knock on the door. An Enhiern responded, come in. Assistant Chow entered, carrying several gift bags in his hands. Manager TH1ECBNH, these are the gifts Director Letter1E9C asked us to prepare. Thank you for saving our young master. An Enhiern was surprised and exclaimed, Director Letter1E9C, young master? Are you saying that boy is Letter1E9C Nam Than's son? Chow Fuang replied, yes, Manager TH1ECBNH, you are the young master's benefactor. If you need anything, feel free to let me know. I won't disturb you any further. Ti1EC3 Utin laughed happily. Director Letter1E9C sounds impressive. Maybe he'd make a good dad. At that moment, she decided to learn more about this man. Somehow, she managed to arrange a meeting with Nam Than's grandfather. Finally, she set a date to meet him. A few days later, at a small cafe on the corner. Ti1EC3 Utin had an appointment with Nam Than's grandfather. She arrived at the cafe alone, pushing the door open as she stepped inside. She was wearing an orange dress and had a backpack slung over her shoulders, happily walking in. Inside the cafe, Ti1EC3 Utin glanced around and soon noticed an elderly man sitting alone with a bodyguard standing behind him. She recognized him immediately as the person she had arranged to meet. The old man also looked in her direction, and the bodyguard behind him spoke, that's the girl. Ti1EC3 Utin beamed and walked up to him. Grandpa Letter1E9C, hello? After chatting online for so long, we finally get to meet in person. The elderly man looked at her kindly and said, Tin Tin, you're here, come have some ice cream. Ti1EC3 Utin ate for a while and then exclaimed, wow, the ice cream is delicious. Thank you, Grandpa. She pouted slightly and continued, I thought I'd meet Uncle Letter1E9C today too, but it turns out he won't even go out and find himself a girlfriend. No wonder he's still single. The old man looked at Ti letter 1 EC3 U10 with gentle eyes and said, he's busy, isn't he? Just like your mother didn't come either. Ti letter 1 EC3 U10 smiled and said, that's right, we can only rely on ourselves to create opportunities for them. The old man patted her head and gently asked, what are you planning this time? If they are truly fated, they will end up together. Ti letter 1 EC3 U10 replied, then how long do we have to wait? Just leave it to me. Mr. letter 1 E9C looked at the adorable little girl in front of him and felt deeply moved. His assistant, standing beside him, spoke up, sir, given the young master's status, wouldn't choosing a single mother be a bit of a disadvantage? The old man turned to his assistant and said, if you're not satisfied, then go find someone yourself, but I quite like her. Women these days are all pampered. Who among them would truly take care of C letter 1 EA3 and H high? This little girl, Tin Tin, is lively and intelligent, clearly well raised. If Nam Than had met someone like that earlier, perhaps what happened to C letter 1 EA3 and H high 3 years ago wouldn't have occurred. The assistant continued, sir, this wasn't your fault, please don't blame yourself. The young master doesn't hold it against you either. The old man sighed, if he didn't blame me, he wouldn't have taken C letter 1 EA3 and H high away and kept him by his side. Scene transition. At this moment, an Nhiern and Ti letter 1 EC3 U10 were sitting in a restaurant, enjoying their meal. Ti letter 1 EC3 U10 said to an Nhiern, Mom, honestly, I think you're feeling much better now. You can go back to work. An Nhiern smiled, why can't I take a few more days off? It's not every day that I get paid leave like this. Let's talk about it after this week. Ti letter 1 EC3 U10's eyes sparkled as she grinned at her mother, Mom, you need to seize this opportunity. An Nhiern asked curiously, what opportunity? Ti letter 1 EC3 U10 beamed and said, your boss. He's handsome, rich, and single. I'm sure there are plenty of people fighting to win his heart. Mom, if you don't try, what will happen to me in the future? Immediately, Ti letter 1 EC3 U10's nose was playfully pinched by her mother. You've never even met my boss. How do you know he's handsome? But in the next second, Ti letter 1 EC3 U10 turned her head toward the entrance, her eyes widening in surprise. The little girl climbed down from her seat and ran toward the door, calling out, over here, leaving an Nhiern stunned. She turned around in surprise, watching Ti letter 1 EC3 U10 run out. The person standing before her was none other than letter 1 E9C Nam Than. He had brought C letter 1 EA3 and H high along, and the two of them looked like a perfect pair of noble gentlemen. And Nhiern was puzzled. What's going on? Ti letter 1 EC3 U10 left her behind and happily ran to greet Nam Than and C letter 1 EA3 and H high. Nam Than was slightly surprised. That child? What is happening here? Why are they both here? Just as he was processing his thoughts, the two children ran in opposite directions. Ti letter 1 EC3 U10 hugged Nam Than, while C letter 1 EA3 and H high ran to embrace an Nhiern. In that moment, an Nhiern recognized the little boy in front of her. It was the same child from the hotel the other day. C letter 1 EA3 and H high beamed at her with joy. Ti letter 1 EC3 U10 turned back to an Nhiern and said, here, Mom, this is the uncle who gave me chocolate at the airport. An Nhiern thought to herself, this little girl, that man is my boss. The two adults stood facing each other as they introduced the children as their own. Nam Than spoke up about C letter 1 EA3 and H high. Thank you so much. I was actually planning to bring C letter 1 EA3 and H high over to personally thank you when I had time. An Nhiern replied, no need. You already granted me leave, just consider that as thanks. Besides, ensuring the safety of our guests is part of my duty. Nam Than continued, time off is one thing, but don't forget our little bet. An Nhiern's face turned green with frustration. She knew he wasn't being kind for no reason. Nam Than added, I won't bother you anymore today. C letter 1 EA3 and H high, let's go. However, C letter 1 EA3 and H high seemed unwilling to listen. The boy clung tightly to an Nhiern, refusing to let go. Nam Than called out to him again, C letter 1 EA3 and H high. An Nhiern gently pulled the boy away and smiled at Nam Than. I'm already here. If you don't mind, why don't you sit down? After all, this table is meant for 4 people. With no choice, Nam Than reluctantly agreed to sit down with an Nhiern and her daughter. The 4 of them sat together. Facing each other, neither of them said a word. Both Nam Than and C letter 1 EA3 and H high just sat there sipping their drinks. Seeing this, an Nhiern found it amusing and thought to herself, so the great CEO letter 1 E9C Nam Than of TH letter 1 ECBNH D stroke letter 1 B0 letter 1 EDD and G group also has a side like this. TI letter 1 EC3 Utin smiled brightly and reached out to C letter 1 EA3 and H. Hi big brother, I'm going to get some fruit. Do you want to come with me? C letter 1 EA3 and H. Hi hesitated for a moment. The boy thought for a while. In the end, he made a decision and reached out his hand, letting TI letter 1 EC3 Utin lead him away, leaving the 2 adults with some private space. TI letter 1 EC3 Utin quickly grabbed C letter 1 EA3 and H Hi's hand and led him away. Nam Than thought to himself, C letter 1 EA3 and H Hi actually agreed to play with a little girl. Across from them, the 2 children were laughing and playing. Seeing this, Nam Than commented, your daughter is very lively and energetic. And Nhiern replied, TI letter 1 EC3 Utin, she's quite mischievous, but she's good at interacting with kids her age. Director letter 1 E9C, you don't have to worry. Oh, by the way, about C letter 1 EA3 and H Hi not speaking, was he born that way? Sorry, I'm just asking, I don't mean anything by it. At that moment, C letter 1E3 and H high was carrying a plate of fruit while TI letter 1EC3 Tin picked some pieces to put on it. The two children were having a great time. And En Hiern, seeing Nam Than remain silent, thought to herself, damn it, I talked too much. Nam Than finally responded to her question. C letter 1EA3 and H high isn't mute, he just doesn't like to talk. The two children slowly walked back to the table. In C letter 1EA3 and H high's hands was a plate filled with fruit, pastries, and jelly. TI letter 1EC3 Tin spoke up, Mom, we're back. C letter 1EA3 and H high held the plate out toward an En Hiern, waiting for her to say something. An idea suddenly popped into TI letter 1EC3 Tin's head. Without hesitation, she hopped onto Nam Than's seat and innocently said, if you like my mom so much, then sit with her. I'll sit with Uncle instead. Nam Than looked at TI letter 1EC3 Tin and said, his name is C letter 1EA3 and H high. In a flash, TI letter 1EC3 Tin turned to the boy and said, then I'll call you big brother C letter 1EA3 and H high, okay? But wait, how old are you? What if you're actually younger than me? C letter 1EA3 and H high remained silent, his eyes deep in thought. Nam Than answered, C letter 1EA3 and H high is 5 years old. His birthday is the day before the Mid-Autumn Festival. What about you? TI letter 1EC3 Tin hesitated. I and En Hiern replied instead. TI letter 1EC3 Tin was born on September 14. Suddenly a thought struck her, what a coincidence. Were these two children born on the same day? After finishing their meal, TI letter 1EC3 Tin and C letter 1EA3 and H high were allowed to play in the ball pit. By now the sky had darkened and the lights outside had turned on. And En Hiern called out, TI letter 1EC3 Tin, it's time to go home. TI letter 1EC3 Tin responded, Mom, can I play with big brother C letter 1EA3 and H high a little longer? And En Hiern firmly said, no, TH letter 1ECB and H, TI letter 1EC3 Tin, it's already late. TI letter 1EC3 Tin continued, Mom, you don't have anything to do at home anyway. Why don't you and Uncle talk more to strengthen your bond? And En Hiern shouted, TH letter 1ECB and H, TI letter 1EC3 Tin, what nonsense are you talking about? She turned to Nam Than and said, Director letter 1E9C, please don't mind her. Kids say the silliest things, I'll teach her better at home. The next moment, C letter 1EA3 and H high pulled out a small piece of paper, wrote something on it, and slipped it into his father's pocket. Nam Than opened it and saw a short message. Let TI letter 1EC3 Tin come over to play. Nam Than was surprised. This was the first time C letter 1EA3 and H high had ever made a request like this. Did he really like this mother and daughter that much? C letter 1EA3 and H high's eyes looked up at him, patiently waiting for his approval. Nam Than lowered his head and thought for a moment before making a decision. Next Saturday, I'll send someone to pick you up. Bring TI letter 1EC3 Tin over to my house to play. And En Hiern was so surprised that she blurted out, huh? Immediately, the two kids high-fived each other and laughed excitedly. Nam Than turned to her and said, come on, let me take you both home. And En Hiern shyly replied, okay, thank you. Everyone got into the car and the driver took them home. Suddenly, C letter 1EA3 and H high tugged lightly at his father's sleeve. The boy then held up a drawing he had made. On the paper were 3 figures holding hands. Nam Than asked, C letter 1EA3 and H high, do you want to have a mother? The boy's round, sparkling black eyes lit up as he called out, Mommy. Nam Than was overjoyed, his eyes filled with astonishment. He hugged C letter 1EA3 and H high tightly and asked, C letter 1EA3 and H high, you spoke? It's been 3 years. Looking at C letter 1EA3 and H high with gentle eyes, he continued, all right, Daddy will find you a mother you like. C letter 1EA3 and H high happily leaned into him. That night the car safely brought an En Hiern and her daughter home. The next morning, at TH letter 1ECB and HD stroke letter 1B0 letter 1EDDNG Corporation, an En Hiern entered, panting, as she leaned against the door and mumbled, why is it so hard to find a kindergarten for Tin Tin? Just then, Assistant Chow turned around and saw her. He said, Manager TH letter 1ECB and H, just in time. This morning, Director letter 1E9C asked when you will submit the plan for the corporation's event in 2 months. An En Hiern smiled and said, yes, I'll make sure to prepare it soon. She thought to herself, the grand opening of the new hotel just ended, and now he's already assigning me the corporation's event planning. Letter 1E9C Nam Than, even Hang TH letter 1EBF and Han wouldn't be this demanding. She continued, oh right, this is some food I made. Last time I noticed your young master liked it. Can you bring it to him for me? As she spoke, she opened her bag to take out the food. Chow Fuang asked, you made this lunch yourself, so does that mean you're skipping lunch today? And En Hiern quickly walked away and added, enrolling my daughter in school has been quite troublesome. I won't have time for lunch, so I didn't want it to go to waste. I'll get back to work now. Assistant Chow watched her leave and replied, understood. Holding the bento box decorated with a bear design, he thought to himself, she says she just doesn't want to waste food, but is this really just that? The young master really likes this meal. After receiving the lunch, C letter 1EA3 and H high was absolutely delighted and ate it eagerly. Just then Nam Than walked in from outside. Seeing his son eating so happily on his own, he asked, C letter 1EA3NH, hi, what are you eating? The assistant beside him answered, Manager TH letter 1ECBNH, send it over for the young master, sir. Nam Than continued, have you informed her about the corporation's event, director? I already told you, she said she would try to submit it soon. But lately she's been busy looking for a kindergarten for her daughter, so she probably doesn't have much time to prepare. The boy stopped eating and watched them talk. Suddenly, C letter 1EA3NH high raised a sign with the words, I also want to go to kindergarten. Nam Than immediately objected, no, kindergartens are too chaotic. You already have a private tutor. Once again, C letter 1EA3NH high lifted the sign, I want to go to the same kindergarten as Tin Tin. If you don't let me, I'll tell great-grandfather. Nam Than pushed the sign back towards C letter 1EA3NH high and thought to himself, the mighty CEO of TH letter 1ECBNHD stroke letter 1B0 letter 1EDDNG group being tormented by his own son every day, who would believe it? Just then there was a knock on the door. Nam Than spoke, come in. A woman in a short white dress stepped inside carrying a lunchbox. Nam Than, am I disturbing you? I made lunch for you and C letter 1EA3NH high, as she entered. Assistant Chow spoke up, Director letter 1E9C, I'll step out now. Nam Than continued, Chow Fuang, put everything else on hold for now and start preparing for the wedding first. Chow Fuang was startled and exclaimed, wedding? Who's getting married? Nam Than looked at him and said, who do you think? Who else but me? The woman's eyes widened as she responded, Nam Than, you mean? Nam Than gave her a cold look and said, start preparing. Once I finish my current work, we will get married. Hearing this, she was overwhelmed with excitement and rushed toward him, asking, Nam Than, are you serious? Nam Than replied, do you think I would joke about something like this? But I won't force you. If you don't want to, you can say so. Her heart bloomed with joy. I agree, I've been waiting 5 years for these words. Nam Than remained cold as he replied, you're right. C letter 1E3NH high needs a mother. Aside from the housekeepers, you're the one most familiar with him. There's no one more suitable than you. At that moment, C letter 1E3NH high suddenly stopped in his tracks, his sign slipping from his hands. Seeing this, Nam Than immediately asked, C letter 1E3NH high, what's wrong? Do you feel unwell? Without a word, C letter 1E3NH high turned and ran away, leaving Nam Than startled as he stood up in alarm. The door slammed shut right in front of him. Seeing the boy like that, she patted Nam Than's shoulder. Let me check on him, she said. Nam Than responded, go ahead. She stood in front of the room and called out, C letter 1EA3NH, hi, it's Aunt Van. Can I come in? With that, she opened the door and stepped inside. The moment she entered, she stepped right on the boy's drawing board, crushing it. C letter 1EA3NH high curled up in the corner of the room, his eyes filled with fear. She raised her voice, didn't I tell you to be a good boy? Tears streamed down C letter 1EA3NH high's face as he trembled with fear. A few seconds later, she opened the door and stepped out, holding his hand. She turned to Nam Than and said, C letter 1EA3NH high has calmed down now. I'll cut back on filming in the future and help you take care of him. Once we start living together, things will be different. C letter 1EA3NH high lowered his head in silence, his eyes filled with sorrow. Nam Than thought to himself, it seems like I can't delay this wedding any longer. A few days later, an Nhieran received a message on her phone. It was an announcement from the private group of TH letter 1ECBNHD stroke letter 1B0 letter 1EDDNG hotel, notifying everyone about an online Zoom meeting scheduled for 3 p.m. the next day. As an Nhieran read the message, TI letter 1EC3 Utin held up a red bracelet and asked, Mom, do you think this bracelet is pretty? She absent-mindedly replied, yes, yes. Just then, another notification popped up. It was from Lam B letter 1EA30 bilingual kindergarten. Dear TH letter 1ECBNH TI letter 1EC3 Utin, you have been accepted into our school. And Nhieran exclaimed, Lam B letter 1EA30 bilingual kindergarten. Didn't they stop accepting students? And they're offering a full scholarship too? And Nhieran turned to TI letter 1EC3 Utin and said, Tin Tin, you've been accepted into Lam B letter 1EA30 kindergarten. Do you know what Lam B letter 1EA30 is? She was puzzled by the unfamiliar name and immediately searched for information online. As she read the details, a thought crossed her mind. Waiving tuition fees worth tens of thousands, could it be letter 1E9C Nam Than's doing? Without hesitation, she grabbed her phone and called him. On the other end of the line, letter 1E9C Nam Than picked up. And Nhieran spoke, Director letter 1E9C, this is TH letter 1ECBNH and Nhieran, sorry to disturb you this late. I just received a notification about my child's acceptance into Lam B letter 1EA30 bilingual kindergarten. Did you help with this? Nam Than replied, you saved C letter 1EA3NH hi. This is just a small favor, don't worry about it. And Nhieran responded, this is too generous of a gift. Nam Than interrupted, it's just a small matter. TI letter 1EC3 Utin laughed cheerfully and whispered to an Nhieran, Uncle letter 1E9C likes me. He thinks I'm cute, so he helped me get into school. Maybe one day I'll become his daughter. Helping his daughter isn't wrong, right? And Nhieran immediately pinched TI letter 1EC3 Utin's cheek. Stop talking nonsense. I haven't even settled the matter at the Japanese restaurant with you yet. Don't push your luck. TI letter 1EC3 Utin pouted, rubbing her cheek with teary eyes. She thought to herself, clearly Uncle letter 1E9C cares a lot about Mom. Grandpa said he never cares about anyone, but now he's helping Mom. Isn't this the start of love? At this moment, TI letter 1EC3 Utin was like a little old lady analyzing the situation. Mom, when will you finally realize it? An Nhieran flicked TI letter 1EC3 Utin's forehead. What are you daydreaming about now? If you have time, why don't you help me with the chores instead of running your mouth? The next moment, Ti letter 1EC3 Yutin picked up a package. And in here and asked, what's that? Ti letter 1EC3 Yutin replied, it's a delivery that arrived today, Mom. And Enhyeon took the package and examined it. Suddenly, a piece of paper slipped out. Surprised, she picked it up and looked at it closely. A wedding invitation? Who could this be from?